Hello, this is Charles, and we're about to start Chapter 6 of Going Home. A little recap. In Chapter 5, Nathan and Myrtle stopped in Brookville, Indiana, to visit the lake there where her husband had proposed to her all those years before, and they ventured into a little bait shop where the man running the bait shop was the grandson of the proprietor when Myrtle had been there in the 50s. Now, just a little author's note, the man running the bait shop is a real person, and so is the dog. Oliver has since passed away since this book was written, but that is very much a real character, although he does not own a bait shop in Indiana. I just made that part up. But anyway, moving on to chapter 6, they are moving on west. And what happens next? Find out soon. Chapter 6. Nathan steered a boat back to the pier, and Thad was waiting there, sitting on the pier with his feet dangling down, a fishing pole in one hand, and a half-eaten peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the other. He gave them a friendly wave, reeled in his line, and went to secure the boat and help Myrtle up. "Here you go, ma'am," he said, offering her his hand. "Thank you kindly. So how was it? You catch anything?" "Caught some small ones and threw them back," Nathan said as he climbed out of the boat. "But the big one I hooked took the pole." "Why'd you go and do that for?" "Oh, don't bother yourself about it. I've lost a couple poles before. It happens to the best of us." "I still feel bad about it. You've been so generous." "Don't worry about it. Did you fall in the boat or something? Heck of a bump you got there." Myrtle piped in with a grin on her face. "My intrepid grandson thought it would be a good idea to stand up in a boat for some reason. That fish brought him right back down," she said, still laughing. "So where are you guys from? You live around here somewhere?" "San Jose," Nathan replied. "We're heading home." "You're driving all the way to San Jose? What are you doing that for?" "Grandma's moving in with me. Grandpa died last week. She doesn't do airplanes." "I see. Well, you have quite a trip ahead of you. You ever get back this way, you have to stop by again." Thad retrieved his gear from the boat and trudged back to the shop, glad he hadn't loaned the boy his best pole. There was something about the old lady that he liked. She reminded him of his own grandmother, a kindly woman who still knew how to live in her old age. Maybe he would find a woman like that one of these days. He set the cooler down next to his chair, turned his game console back on, and opened the cooler to see if there were any Cokes left. As he took one out, he noticed something else that wasn't there before. There was a folded piece of paper placed inside a plastic bag to keep it dry. He unfolded the paper, and inside it was a check, made out with his first name and last name blank. The attached note read, "Maybe this will help you fix the place up a bit. Thanks for everything. Myrtle Callahan." "Well, isn't that nice?" he said to himself. Then he looked at the check and was speechless. It was made out for $15,000. Nathan looked at his phone and saw two missed calls from his boss. Must not have been a good signal on the lake. He decided he would call Frank back later. Whatever it was could wait. They got in the car and started back up the gravel road when Myrtle said, "So where are we headed next? You have the trip planned?" "You said you wanted to see Mount Rushmore on the way." "I looked it up. We have to get up to 90 to head that way, so I guess we can head through Chicago." "Chicago. Haven't been there since I think it was 1956. You were still in college then. What were you doing in Chicago?" "The football team was playing Northwestern. There was this cute guy on the team I had a crush on. I went to most of the games that year." "So you were stalking this football player. How'd that turn out?" "Turned out pretty good. It was your grandfather." "So how you plan on getting to Chicago?" "Well, while you were making friends with Dogzilla back there." "His name's Oliver." "Whatever. While you were dishing out the belly rubs, I was checking the atlas and the GPS. We head up to a town called Connorsville. There's a state route runs west out of there and picks up US 52 all the way to Indy. Then we take 65 from Indy to Chicago, well, to Gary, actually, where we pick up 80. That's a toll road. and we take the loop around the west part of Chicago, and we get 90 from there. We should get there late enough in the day to miss the bad traffic. Sounds like you have it all planned out. I think so. Dad took me up to Chicago once. I remember how bad the traffic can be. I hope we miss most of it. I also remember all the tolls. He had one of those passes you put up on your windshield. I hope I can get one up there somewhere. Is that your boss calling again? Nathan was hoping to ignore the phone again, but he decided to go ahead and take the call, hoping Frank was in a better mood this time. Nathan, where are you? Please tell me you're making good progress. In Brookville, Indiana, heading west. I certainly hope you're heading west. Only in Indiana? How many miles have you covered since I talked to you last? Oh, about 50, give or take. About 50 miles. You do plan on getting back here sometime this year, don't you? We have to get this patch out, and the AI balancing is part of that patch. You guys should have gotten on a plane. I told you, Grandma can't fly. Yeah, I think you said that. Well, you have to put the hammer down and get here by the end of the week. I know how far it is. No time to stop and smell the roses. I'm sure Grandma will understand. Click. Nathan just drove on in silence for a few moments until his grandma broke in on his thoughts. That didn't sound too good, she said. I've never heard Frank that upset before. You ever taken time off before? Not much. I usually end up cashing in unused PTO at the end of the year. I never manage to take all the days. So now you're learning something about the business world. Nobody cares. You might do a good job. You might know your job inside and out and think you're some important person to the company. But there were people doing that job before you got there, and there will be people doing it after you're gone. If you're not the lead dog, the view never changes. Grandpa used to say that all the time. You might have a point. I just thought it was important to the company. I'm doing well for someone my age, and I really do know the job. In fact, I know most of the jobs on the development team. I've qualified for that promotion. Promotions don't always go to the most qualified, honey. With that, Myrtle got out her journal and began writing as they drove through the Indiana countryside. Nathan took in the flat landscape with cornfields in every direction and thought that for flat land it could be quite scenic in its own way. It was mid-afternoon on a sunny day with enough of a breeze blowing to ripple the tassels on the corn stalks, making wave-like patterns across the fields similar to the water at the lake earlier. He wondered what his grandma was writing in that journal of hers. She had written quite a bit since they had left New Jersey. He wondered also how she could write that much in a moving car, and if any of it would be legible. His thoughts ran to his job and how Frank was coming down on him. What was he to do? Taking Grandma in was the right thing to do. Frank should realize that and cut him some slack. What was he supposed to do? Abandon his grandma? Or force her to fly when it might not be good for her health? He loved his job and he was darn good at it. Better than most his age. He loved video games, maybe more than he should, and he loved making them. Frank was being unreasonable. Didn't he see the sense in what Nathan was saying? He had a laptop with him. He could put in some work every evening on the way out there. Probably even finish most of the AI balancing for that patch. He was more than qualified for that promotion. He had worked his way up since starting there 6 years ago. He understood all of the different steps in game development, having worked in every phase of the development of the most recent release. Heck, he probably knew enough to develop the darn thing himself, given a good enough team around him. At that point, a thought took root, and it intrigued him. If he had a good understanding of what it took to develop a game, why did he have to be stuck doing it for someone else? He knew the answer to that question. Companies like Tempest have multi-million-dollar budgets to throw at a game, which is why they release AAA titles every year. Even knowing what he knew, he would need a team of superstars to even hope of producing anything remotely close to the quality a large company can pull off. Still, the thought wouldn't go away. He loved his work and he liked most of his coworkers, but if his boss was going to force him to have to choose between his job and his family, he knew where that would likely end up. As these thoughts crossed his mind, he also thought of Phoebe, the coworker he had a crush on. If he lost his job or quit, how would he go about asking her out, if he ever screwed up the courage to do so? When he was turning things over in his mind at moments like this, it was easy to imagine doing or saying the right thing, but when it came down to it, he was extremely non-confrontational. He thought it was just his shyness, but maybe there was more to it than that. He liked everything to be smooth, and he abhorred confrontation in almost any form. He simply wanted Frank to see the sense without there being any trouble. He was so deep in his thoughts he completely missed the turn for Highway 44 in Connorsville and had to turn around to backtrack. He made the turn and was headed west when Myrtle paused from her journaling to state that she had to use the restroom. They came to a town called Glenwood and found a small convenience store where Nathan pulled in for his grandma to use the restroom. He waited a few minutes, and when she wasn't coming back, he went in to see what was wrong, only to find Myrtle arguing with the store clerk about use of the restroom. "Can't you read the sign on the door, lady?" the clerk was saying. "It says no public restrooms." "Sure, I can read the sign, but I simply can't wait to get to the next town. You have to have a restroom here." Nathan walked up and asked, "Is there something wrong here?" "Yeah, this lady can't read the no restroom sign." Nathan took one look at his squirming grandmother and another look at the young store clerk and said to him, "Look, my grandma here has to go. The next town is Rushville. I don't think she can wait that long. What harm can come from letting her use your bathroom? Where do you go?" "I go to the bathroom in the back." "You mean the one through that door?" "Yeah, but it's not public." "It is now, buddy," Nathan said as he began leading his grandma that way. "Unless you want to be the jerk that made an old lady pee herself." "Okay, whatever, dude." When they got back to the car, Myrtle said, "Thanks. I don't think I could have held it another 5 minutes." It was nothing, really. I don't know why that clerk was being such a jerk about it. "Just following the rules. And by the way, mister, if you see my grandson anywhere, you're funny." He pulled out. The drive resumed its previous pattern. Myrtle scribbling away in her journal and Nathan mesmerized by the wind across the cornfields, at least until he passed through Rushville and headed on into Indianapolis, cornstalks being replaced by skyscrapers. Indianapolis came and went with hardly a notice, and they found themselves on what seemed to Nathan to be one of the most boring stretches of road he had ever been on. The mesmerizing beauty of the cornfields was now becoming monotonous. But the traffic was relatively light, and he was able to once again set the cruise control and get into a groove where his mind wandered. For someone who had little experience with long-distance driving, he was fast becoming acclimated to it and found it oddly relaxing. He didn't quite understand how truckers did this day after day, but days like today it was enjoyable. The weather was mild, the music on the radio was still keeping his interest, and the miles blended one into the other at a rate that startled him. In what seemed like a few minutes, but was in reality over an hour, he found himself passing Lafayette. Chicago was no great way ahead, especially as fast as the time seemed to be passing, and he almost regretted he had planned on stopping there for the night. Maybe if Grandma didn't mind, they could push on a bit farther. By the time they got to Merrillville, the situation had changed, and he was now no longer sure about his desire to push farther. He had not bothered to change the radio station to get any local weather, so the storm that rolled through from the northeast took him entirely by surprise. One moment the skies were blue, the next there were some ugly clouds, and then the wind kicked up strong, blowing across the highway, catching the tow-behind trailer broadside on and testing his ability to keep the vehicle in the lane. Then the rain hit, coming down in a torrential deluge that made visibility minimal and slowed him down to under 45 miles per hour. He merged on the 80-94 west heading toward Illinois and pulled into the first service plaza he came to, where they sat to wait out the worst of the storm. There Nathan produced an umbrella from the back seat and they ventured inside as fast as Myrtle could manage, which was not nearly as fast as Nathan would have preferred with the rain coming down as hard as it was. Nathan remarked on her speed of movement and she replied, "They don't call me Myrtle the Turtle for nothing." "Who calls you that?" Nathan asked. Your grandpa was the first. It wasn't that I couldn't get around fast back then, but I was never one to want to move that fast. Patrick, though, was always moving like he had a deadline to beat. I never understood why anyone would want to walk that fast. But that was him. I would always lag behind. We weren't even married, yet the first time he called me that, but it was in good humor. The longer we were married, the more he learned to slow down some when he was with me. But I could tell it drove him crazy. Yeah, I remember how fast he walked when I would go somewhere with him, but I never minded. Myrtle the turtle. Now that's funny. Hey Nate, look over there. You can buy one of those toll passes there. Okay, I'll be right back. Nathan purchased the Easy Pass and they waited a few more minutes for the storm to subside into something of a steady hard rain instead of the deluge they had arrived in, and they went back to the car to continue. Were you planning on calling it a day around here, Nate? I'm not sure. I had figured it would be a good place to stop, but I think we should get west of the city before we turn in, so we won't have to mess with it in the morning. They did indeed push on west of the city, making it to Rockford before deciding that they were both in need of a hot shower and a hot meal, not necessarily in that order. They settled on the Baymont Inn for no better reason than it had a Cracker Barrel next door, and Myrtle could think of no better hotel than one next to a Cracker Barrel. The hot meal came first, then the hot showers at the Baymont, and then they were both stretched out on separate beds to wind down, Myrtle with her journal and pen and Nathan with his iPad. He didn't tell his grandma, but he had downloaded a journal app and he was going to try his hand at writing down his thoughts. It seemed to do Grandma some good, and he certainly had a lot on his mind he wanted to sort through. He hadn't driven a very large number of miles that day, but perhaps a combination of the activity at the lake, then driving through the rain, had tired him more than he was aware. He opened the app, wrote a few lines, and fell fast asleep, the iPad falling next to him on the bed. Myrtle saw this, smiled, and went over to tuck him in. He's never too old to be tucked in, she thought to herself. She slipped the pillow under his head, reached down to take off his shoes, and picked up the iPad. The screen was still active when she picked it up, and she saw what kind of app was on the screen. She smiled briefly, set the iPad on the dresser, and went to bed. Well, I hope you enjoyed Chapter 6. If so, please like and subscribe. For information about my other work, you can check out the links in the description below. Take care, and I will see you on the next one.